Hey, so I want to talk about virtual reality. Now, you have seen it everywhere. You're on Facebook and you see it. We've all heard of Oculus and all the cheaper versions making that happen. And I've seen in a lot of videos recently about bringing VR into education. And for me, that's really interesting because, well, I've been PowerPointing people to death for years, and it's happened to me hundreds of times when I go take classes in technology as well. And we've all heard of Google, of course, and they have quite a few initiatives that are in the VR space. And they have one called Cardboard, which is making major changes in youth education. So we've seen VR used in entertainment, marketing, a lot of gaming sections, but the education impact that it can have is immense and pretty much endless. So it's going to let us actually go beyond connecting just devices, but connecting people. And that's when education takes a whole different step. VR lets us go beyond just watching a video, watching a PowerPoint, reading a lesson. We can actually immerse ourselves and engage in a specific environment. Now, we can create an experience that's more than just a lesson or a concept or a place that we read about, but we can actually go to that place, interact with that place or environment. So as devices are decreasing in price and they're increasing in availability and their capabilities are expanding, we're really seeing the potential for a globally connected classroom. And get rid of textbooks and even some of those apps and videos like you're watching right now, and be able to jump into the lesson and the learning environment. So there's two videos that I've looked at, and one of them that really spoke to me was a TEDx talk. And there's a gentleman named Alex who talks about some of the considerations in VR design. He wants to make sure that the participants are not only comfortable both physically, but physiologically as well. So he talks about motion sickness, virtual object collision, which is definitely something he explained really well, and different fears that you have in your participants. So whether it's the fear of heights or being in small spaces or maybe even being underwater. So these are some things that we have to consider when creating these environments. But let's talk about what opportunities there are with VR. So let's take a look at some of the different educational sections or spaces that it could really help with. And the first one that comes to mind for me is medical. Now, I am not a doctor or a nurse or even somebody who can deal with sick people in general. I don't even like when I get sick. I hate taking medication. But for those people who spend almost a decade in school learning about different body parts, how to interact with the human body, different medications, different tools and procedures, this can be an amazing help for them because they can interact with the body parts without necessarily having to sacrifice any real humans to get those lessons in. Now, another thing that I think is absolutely amazing and potential opens up for this through VR is ocean discovery. Now we're going to be able to interact with wildlife environments like we've never been before without necessarily having some of those restrictions like full scuba diving gear and a trip to a beautiful place. And that goes for more than just the ocean. We're talking arid lands, deserts, rainforests, jungles, places that are really hard to reach. We're going to open up those opportunities for pretty much everyone to actually interact with and experience to a certain extent. Now, let's go beyond just kind of the cool education part, but really where it steps into safety. And this is where you take the steps into technology and education, as well as bigger machines. So when we're looking at dangerous environments or new training in the workplace, this is where I see the potential being life-saving when we're able to implement VR for education. So when we think about somebody learning how to operate an aircraft or working on an engine or maybe even a boat or submarine or some huge machine, CNC machinery or manufacturing equipment, well, the potential for all of those types of environments in regards to bodily harm and injury to the employees and trainees is pretty high. Now, let's think about that when we introduce a new type of machine. Nobody really wants to be the test pilot for that, whether you're on the ground or at 30 to 50,000 feet. So we can actually use VR to really conduct training without the fear of bodily harm. And it creates a lot of leeway and will open up a lot of markets for more entrants to those markets because they'll have access to the education and the environment. It also is going to not only reduce the potential for harm, but reduce the cost, because if you have somebody training and they slip in a virtual environment, well, they're not going to get hurt in real life. So that's going to save millions, if not billions of dollars on medical costs. Anyways, there are lots of challenges that we're facing, but I think the potential is absolutely endless. And this has been a great thing for me just to look into and research, because I can't wait for the day where I'm able to implement VR in my classroom. And this will allow students to tear down computers, interact with actual software integration and user interfaces, and make changes in the design mode in a much faster and more efficient way. It'll also increase their capability of understanding and comprehending some of the lessons that are really hard to explain from a 2D picture. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this. I would love to hear your thoughts on virtual reality overall, as well as in the educational space.